After Hours.
On this episode of the History of the Course After Hours podcast, we discuss the band from Parkersburg, West Virginia, the OGs of metalcore, the one, the only, Zayo. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at IsSurvivedByPro for news and latest episode postings. And make sure to subscribe to the show, leave us a 5-star review, and write us a comment on YouTube or whatever podcast service you're using. Make sure to check us out on TikTok and give us a follow at Is Survived By Productions. And if you'd like to see us do some live streams, leave us a comment or tweet us the keyword stream. Now, without further ado, let's start the show.
The devil is in Atlanta, army surrounded.
Burn it down and walk away. 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 Welcome back to the History of the Core's After Hours podcast, where each and every episode I, Curtis, sit down with my good friend and avid listener to the History of the Core's podcast, Erik. What's up, Erik?
Well, everything. Mood,
everything.
Temperature. It's wonderful. Wonderful.
Everything is great. So great that we get to talk about a little band that some might say are the OGs of metalcore, Erik. Would you agree?
I have heard such things, yes.
These are good things that we hear, good things. Yeah, today we are talking about the band known as Zayo. We are not pumping the brakes at all. We're going full gas, no brakes on this one, man, because there's so much to cover with Zayo. So let's dive right on into it, Erik. How were you introduced to the band known as Zayo?
Pretty sure I didn't know about them before the original History of the Course podcast.
Okay.
So I may have heard of like the name, but
I was going to say, not even the
out.
name or anything. Yeah.
But I mean, it wouldn't register even if I had heard it before, because I never really, dove deep into it like I did this time for sure.
Right. Okay. Nice. Another plug, 2 for 2. Woo! We're rolling. Okay, so you've heard of them through the History of the Course. Have you listened to all of their discography now?
I have, yes.
Okay. So brand new listener comes up to you. They say, Erik, I've heard this band called Zayo. Heard you just listen to them. What am I about to get myself into? How would you describe Zayo to that person?
Well, this is a very, very broad brush we're going to paint them with real quick.
Okay.
Very broad, because they have, we talk about eras, and they have 3 to 4 different eras if you really want to break it down.
Yeah.
So
some might say 4 or 5.
Yeah, really. With a very broad brush, I would say if you take the slower, melodic, and sometimes chug-a-luggy music from your old school metal, think of your Metallicas and that kind of stuff, and add a nearly demonic sounding vocals, but with the Christian influenced lyrics, there you have it.
It's a strange melting pot.
It really is, and it really makes Zayo.
It's a Zayo soup. That's what it is. Now here's your bowl and eat it. Delicious. Cool. Okay, so Erik, here's the first question for you. First trivia question. You ready for this?
So ready.
What is the meaning of the Greek word Zayo?
It's something.
Did you even know it was Greek? Okay, yeah, that's correct, man.
Yes,
that's correct. That's pretty cool. I never knew.
Saved me. Yeah, I never knew that either. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, in thinking of like the word Zayo, it's just like it never really registered with me of like what kind of language it was or anything. It was just kind of a cool word, Thought it was just maybe
right.
like Right. I almost kind of thought it was maybe just like a word Adam Sandler uttered at one point or something. Zibidbad,
Yeah,
zibidoo, Zayo. Yep, correct, man.
it does remind me a little bit of Seos, and I think it's careful in Japanese or Mandarin. I forget
Yeah,
what it is, but it's the word
yeah, I
careful.
can't. Okay, yeah, I can't remember which language, but you're on the right track over there. But yeah,
Yeah, I couldn't remember what it was, but it reminded me quite a bit of that when I heard it on, the original podcast.
right. All right, well, one for three. There's two more questions to go. So, oh crap. All right, here we go. There's several different eras, Eric. You've already mentioned that, and I'm sure we'll mention it more and more as we go along in this episode. But there's several eras that we'll go through in the history of Zayo. The first era is really kind of defined by the All Else Failed and Splendor Shards album with their original vocalist Sean Jonas. Lyrically and even in their stage presence at that time, it's very rooted in the members' faith, not just Sean, but some of the other ones that were in the group at that time too. Josh in the original episode went as far as to call then vocalist Sean Jonas, quote, the hardcore vocalist I want. Uh, but he did say that, well, he said that based off of he's very passionate, but he did say at the same time he did feel like he was a little too preachy. And we had some good discussions on that of like where's the line that's like, okay, like we already know who you are, like what you're representing. I mean, obviously I can hear that in your music. And I'd almost say, just let your music do the talking for you. Um, but anyway, you, Eric, because we're done with Josh, forget him. You, Eric, talk to me about your first time hearing this era of Zayo compared to what we're going to end up hearing later on as kind of like what you described earlier, demonic almost screams, but still with some Christian lyrics in it in their discography.
So first time I heard this, because I think I jumped straight, just feet first into this era. Actually, I
Oh,
didn't
okay.
jump in the middle. I didn't jump on in, like behind you, well intentioned virus. No, I jumped right at the beginning. So I pretended it was 1996 or whatever, and I just jumped in. And so musically, they gave me like Metallica vibes, like I
Mhm.
kind of sort of mentioned earlier.
Okay.
And even though they're much later, kind of there was some Trivium kind of going on in there, and
Okay.
maybe that's where Trivium got some of their sound from. Who knows?
Yeah.
And let's see, vocally, definitely hardcore punk.
Yeah.
Josh described it well with the
Yes.
hardcore vocalist that I want. Yeah,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
pretty it. Um, and like you and Josh talked about how they're kind of the OGs of metalcore. It's kind of odd thinking about this is just like hardcore. I've heard
Right.
hardcore before. There's
Yeah.
Comeback Kid. There's this, that, the other thing. But the truly odd part is the lyrics because they are straight up praise and worship during parts of it.
Right.
And
Right.
then if they're not that, they're very heavily Christian themed. I mean, especially getting a little bit later into Christian or the Splinter Shards and even beyond that, really. But
Right.
that was the odd part for me. But yeah, that's kind of it, right? They were hardcore back in the day.
Well, it's tough to with and they talk about it on Lesser Lights where at that time period they're performing with bands who are almost like total opposite of what they believe in. And so,
So much so they were
it,
making fun of them. It sounded like.
right, exactly. Yeah, there gets to be some points like within the band of like confrontation between Jesse and Sean of look, you don't need to go up there and do all the da 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 da. And it kind of goes back to like what I was saying just a little bit ago. I mean, at a certain point, it's like your music's doing the speaking for you. I mean, I know what you are and what you believe in because of the music and the lyrics that you're putting out there on the stage. It's almost like just let that be you don't have to be a preacher up on the stage, a traveling preacher, you know. I mean, your words are in the lyrics already in the music, so just let that be your sermon if it's going to be that. But oh man, I had another thought. Oh, the OG part. I think the OG metalcore more comes in when Dan comes in on Fire and
Right,
Blood
right. It's
because
just,
yeah, at this
when y'all were talking about it kind of again with that
right.
broad brush, I was like, metalcore? I don't hear
Yeah.
metalcore
Well,
here yet.
and yeah, and that's the thing about it too is like when we specifically, and I know we've said this several times, when we specifically talk about Zayo, you know, we're not hating on, you know, the Sean Jonas era or, you know, All Else Failed and Splinter Shards. It's good in its own right, but to us, it's like Zayo is Dan, and Zayo really starts at Fire and Blood. You know, I just
And when you
don't
get a
when I
hankering for a little Zao in your ears,
right.
you go for something Dan was
Right,
involved in, right?
exactly. Yeah,
I'm the same
self-titled,
way.
you know,
Yep.
funeral, you know, awake, whatever. Yeah, I don't think, I'm feeling like Zato today. All else failed. It's like, no, not even the re-recording either, man. Which, that's an adventure right there on its own. But um, any clue, Eric? Because me and Josh were talking about this. Is like just we couldn't think of what the meaning was, but any clue what their sophomore album title, "The Splintered Shards: The Birth of Separation" means? Maybe you can help us out on this
I
one.
I came up with two ways to interpret it
Okay, let's
after
hear it.
absolutely poring over the lyrics. I think I literally read every lyric on the whole album.
Okay.
Um, so number one would be, if you're separated from God, then your life is this broken mess, right?
Hmm.
So like splinter shards, right? The
Okay.
birth of separation.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
So
I mean, I had
the
a
second one I come up with
yeah. No, number two.
is
No.
number two is especially this comes from the song Repressed. I know I wrote it in those notes. And then if you kind of read a little bit into it after listening to Repressed, you can kind of see that. But maybe it's because this country has everybody feeling so, just pulling apart from each other, right?
Yeah.
And they're just so separated from one another and God. This one nation under God, right?
Right.
Uh, maybe it's just that, and again, a house divided against itself cannot stand, right?
It's true.
Very
Yeah.
religious theme type stuff going on.
Yeah.
And then I kind of had a bonus, just a thought come through when I was writing this down too. Could just be talking about different denominations. I'm sure
True.
when they were out on the road doing their first CD, they come in contact with a lot of different denominations, and people going, "Well, you're wrong." Well, no, you're wrong. Well, the Bible says no. The Bible says so. Maybe
Yeah.
that's the splinter shards that they're looking at.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
very ambiguous. That's what I've got to say.
Yeah, I just like I think the thing is like I start reading it and I'm just like, there's too many words here. I don't know. It just feels like it's like just a mouthful, you know. I don't know. It's crazy, but I had a feeling it had something to do religiously,
That's the
just being
best three
them. But
ideas I come up with.
no, that's I mean that gives me some clarity on it. I feel like that's in the right direction
Like I
at
said,
least.
I read all the lyrics. So
Right.
those are
He
the
did his
two and a
homework,
half
man.
ideas that I did. I tried.
Oh, man.
But two and a half ideas worth after that.
Okay. All right. Well, Sean Jonas leaves. Here's my next question for you, Eric. What band did vocalist Sean Jonas form years after his departure of Zayo?
So this would have been after his preaching career, right?
Yeah, that's
Okay, okay.
correct.
Uh, let's see here. It would be one Symphony in Peril.
There you go. I like that. I like that. All right, two for
Woo!
two. Okay, 2 for 2. We'll see if you can get that third one go for 100% later on in the episode here.
Small plug for them. They're a good band too.
They're a
Check them
good
out.
band. Yeah,
They
they're
got
all right,
new.
I guess. They're okay. They have a
They
new
got new
album
stuff
coming out
coming.
this
It'll be
year?
exciting.
Or is I thought that
Yeah.
was Maylene and the Sons of Disaster were supposed to have a new album coming out
I'm
this year,
afraid
wasn't
not, my
it?
friend. I'm
No? Okay,
afraid not.
maybe I just got confused there. Oh, that's right. The band who's been on hiatus longer than them's coming out with a new album. That's right. Symphony in Peril. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Alrighty.
I
You
feel
know
the
what I want,
sass in the
people.
room right now.
Oh man. Okay, so Sean Jonas is gone. That era is over. We're gonna start a brand new era. The first album with Dan on vocals, which is Where Fire and Blood Bring Rest, has been called a monumental release, as it has been cited by bands who would come along after as a huge influence in their lives. Do you agree? And what are your impressions of hearing Dan's quote, gnarly razor blade gargle pipes?
Yes. That's not a bad way of putting it at all.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that's beautiful.
this is definitely a huge release for them. After I heard, you Josh talk about them, I was on one of my quests for new music. I let
Hmm.
an album play out, and then just whatever comes on, I'm gonna see what it is. Right? Found
Right.
some pretty good ones that way. But one that came on, and like you said, those razor blade gargled vocals that was just like something straight up out of a demon's lips. Like that crazy thing behind you there.
Right, exactly.
Uh, and I was like, "What is this? My lands! I got to listen to this." So I looked at it and I was like, "Okay, well, this is that Zao thing, right?" And it was either Lies of Serpents or Far Fell Fair. Blah, blah, blah. Words are hard. A Far Farewell. And I really had to take a double take on the age of the album when I saw that, because overall, sound wise, still holds its own.
Oh yeah.
Still great.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we're
Still great.
talking 98 on that album.
Yep. 98.
That's wild. I mean, like I said, it still holds its own really well. Like I told you, actually, after I heard that song, I was like, this could be like released yesterday.
It was
So
yeah, that was oh man. And they talk about on the Lesser Lights DVD about um recording Dan's first time recording Lies of Serpents, which is the very first one. And he just comes in so hard and so raw and gnarly
mhm.
on that song. And Jesse and Brett were talking about Jesse come in, grab Brett, said, you gotta hear this, you gotta hear this, you gotta hear this. And dude, I can only imagine. I mean, I can remember the first time I heard it, but just like to hear that live as it's being recorded. I mean, and to be in the band, you'd be like, oh, we're gonna be rich. We're gonna be rich, bro. We're gonna be rich, you know. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I think Dan's vocals are 70% of why that still holds up so well. And
yeah.
it wasn't just that, especially in an era like 98. We were talking about it, many other podcasts, but, that time of who could scream the gnarliest, who could just
Oh yeah.
blow their throat out first, and, the throat burning screams we always talk about. And then he comes up with these screams, and it's like, whoa, the game
A-
has changed.
And you
And
like you
it's
hear him like
pretty,
talk. You hear him talk like he never sounds like rough. Like he's done damage to his voice. I mean, he talks
right.
normal. I mean, even in the DVD at that time, which was in 2004, 2005. I mean, he's fine. It doesn't sound like he's had any real damage to his
Yeah.
throat. I
Just
always go
normal
back
dude.
to listening to early interviews of Jeremy Baum from Touche Amore. And I mean, every time he did a interview, his voice was so so like he was just about on his deathbed, you know. It's like, dude, you can't sustain that, man. There's just no way. And I think he figured out, how to do that, obviously. But yeah, it's amazing that he's been able to hold out with how gnarly his screams are through all these years. But
Yeah, that's amazing.
alrighty, let's talk about their next album, Eric. Let's talk about Liberate Te Ex Inferis. otherwise translated in Latin to save yourself from hell, which comes out on the heel of the first, but definitely not their last hiatus. A nice little reoccurring theme here in this band. It sees current member and soon to be backbone of the group, Scott Mellinger, join the band. Josh described the sound on the album as though they were, quote, trying to knock off the cobwebs. And it, quote, sounds like they're happy to be back together. Yay. So, Eric, give me your opinion. What do you make of the band's fourth studio album, Liberate, TX, and Ferris? Brand new guitarist. We talk about Dan, Scott, and Russ, the two guitarists and the vocalist. Yes, Jesse is an integral part of the beginning of Zayo, but if those three guys are together, Scott, Russ, and Dan, that's the winning combo in me and Josh's opinion. So that's what we get on this album. What do you make of this album?
Definitely a solid album for sure. Really, really hard to believe. We're talking about the dates of these. Really hard to believe it was released in 2000.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
that's
that's
amazing
it's
to me.
crazy to think about, man. It's so weird because like I look at like the discography, if they didn't have dates on it or years or whatever, I would have yeah, I would have shifted it more like forward, I think. Because like you're saying, it's like just the sound of it, it's like, yeah, this doesn't sound like, but I don't know, man.
Ahead of their
It's
time might be
interesting,
an
yeah.
understatement.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. Anything that stood out to you on this album?
Let's see. Listening to this back to back with Fire and Blood, just
Hmm.
one to the other, boom, boom. Didn't skip much of a beat, really. Um, I like the small acoustic kind of slash talking part of If These Scars Could Speak.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yep.
a neat little thing. I don't think they'd really done much, if any, of at that point. But the hiatus itself didn't seem to dull them as a band. They still had that edge.
Yeah, they definitely did, man. They definitely did. Alrighty. Anything else for Liberate?
Sing it to us one more time.
Liberate te ex inferis.
All right. Good stuff.
Oh, thank you. All right. So this next era, Eric, is an interesting one. I call it the quote era of chaos. Some members leave, while others stay one foot in the door, and the other foot out. Tensions continue to mount as two main members remain. Um, it's just, just complete chaos. This era also sees, though, three albums. Their self-titled album, which is called self-titled, and that's the cool thing too. It's not even called Zayo; it's just called self-titled, which is kind of interesting. Um, it was called their quote least cohesive, despite being among its greatest sonically, with the track placement being questionable by a reviewer. You also have Parade of Chaos, which, in my opinion, has sick title, album title, and sick album artwork, but really feels half-hearted and hollow at times. And then you also have the reworking or the re-recording of All Else Failed. Now, the two original albums have interesting approaches to them when it comes to writing and recording. For one, self-titled has why I don't know why they did this, but Jesse decided he wanted to do electronic drums on self-titled. And then on top of that, there's an acoustic song, which I remember the first time listening to that, I was like, okay, they're gonna hit. They're gonna, Dan's gnarly vocals are gonna come in at some point. It's like, what's what's happening? Oh, the next song is on. What just happened? Um, and then, writing all the songs for both those albums, either on the car ride to the studio or while they're in the studio. So, I understand like you can go back to when they first signed with Solid State Records and put out Splintered Shards, Jesse admitted it was a bad contract. It was one they shouldn't have signed, but they were young, they were dumb. At that point, it's like, oh, great, we're getting signed. Yeah, what? Give me it. Let's go. Let's sign it. And so I feel like at this point too, with everything that's going on in terms of members, coming and going, 1 foot out, 1 foot in, da da da, you're feeling pressure from the record company. Is like, you guys got to get us. You signed this contract. You got to get us some records out. Let's go. And so the two guys now are kind of like, all right, well, let's just like go to the studio and I guess put something down, even if it's crappy. I wouldn't say it was either one of these are crappy, but they're not the greatest Sayo albums, that's for sure.
They're different.
And then right, and then on top of that, it's like then you throw in the re-recording of All Else Failed at the very end of that, which it's kind of like it goes right back to the bad contract deal. It's they needed one more album. Well, let's just do a re-recording of this. And Dan and all of them talked about it. It's like this doesn't even feel right because Jesse was the only one that was there at that time. And then on top of that, it's like the lyrics, like we don't really feel all 100% into these lyrics. It's like we're not even the ones that wrote them, and so on and so forth. So it was kind of like an awkward era there. That's a mouthful, but Eric, putting all of that era into one little question here, give me your thoughts on that time in Zayo's history. The era of chaos.
Woo, woo. So the electric drums for me are kind of a turnoff, honestly.
Yeah.
If you're going to use them, use it as an accent, not as a main focus.
I would just really
mix
like
them
to know
like normal
what.
drums.
Yeah, I just really wish like I could know what his like why that at this time? Why like who was influencing you? Because obviously it's probably like, well, you're probably listening to certain music and they had electronic drums. You're like, that's so cool. I want to do that. But I just in Zayo, no. So I'd really like it if they would have gone back and like put real drums, like a re-recording of it or remaster or whatever, and put like real drums in on the self-title. I wonder what it would have sounded like that. But anyway, carry on.
One song I do kind of like the those electronic drums in suspended.
Yeah,
At the
yeah.
end, there's
Oh well,
quite
there's
a bit of them.
Yeah, there's. Well, okay, yeah. No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, go ahead.
The that stuff
Yeah.
at the end.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool to begin with. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of cool. I hope it kind of, just fades into like the next song or something. And then it continues. And it continues to continue. It's like, okay. You could have went, not 30 seconds with it, but shrunk it into like 10
Right.
seconds.
Yeah.
You might have had me with that particular track and that type of drum, that sound that was going on, but it just went on too long. And that kind of goes into the experimental of this time period. I mean, we're talking about probably getting Pro Tools for the first time and really being
Right.
able to play with electronic drums for the first time. So, and the fact they were trying to crank these guys out as fast as they could. But that being said, historically, a song written in haste has a lot of potential, right?
Oh man.
So either that or the trash heap, one or the other.
I'm sorry. I'm laughing because I just all of a sudden I heard 5-Year Winter at the very beginning of it, where it's like na 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 na, just like that electronic hi hat is like, oh god, ugh. Oh, what's happening?
Yeah. 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 That's a good track still, but could be better.
It's a great track. I mean, obviously I used the lyrics from it at the very end, but yeah, I just remember hearing that for the first time and realizing it was electric drums. And it's like, yeah. And then you're like, what the?
Huh?
Huh?
Is this still Zayo?
What's happening, man? Yeah, it's interesting. But anyway, carry on again.
So those songs written in haste have that potential for two things: greatness or the back of the trash heap. One great example for the greatness is John Denver wrote Annie's song in 5 minutes. He was skiing down a slope, He got to the bottom and wrote it on a napkin, is the story I used to hear. And I think he actually went back to the cabin, wrote it down in 5 minutes, though. Wrote all the music to it, apparently, had
Right.
it cranked out. But that's a good example of how he just didn't overthink it. He wasn't overproduced because he didn't overthink it. But on the other hand, sometimes you should think about it before you record an entire album.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about some bands that were, like a snap in and out of the recording studio, and it's like you took a week to do that. Like,
Right.
wow. And there's other bands that said you took 6 months to produce that pile of hot, stinky garbage.
Right,
Fantastic.
exactly.
You should have not paid for that studio time. I'm sorry.
You've wasted your time and mine.
And mine.
Oh man.
So
Well, the part that
I do
always
like a
got
few
me
of
with
these.
the part that always got me with these two albums was you've got them writing some songs on the way down there, just the two of them, Scott and Jesse, and then in the studio as well. But then, like, they're still getting Dan to come in his off time because he's not really in the band right now, and so he's coming in to do vocals. But it's like he's just kind of like at the last second throwing lyrics out there that he's probably already written, but just like trying to match it up with the music. It's like, man, because he still comes in solid. He never, on any of these albums, in my opinion at least, he's never the downside of it. The electronic drums on a different
How did
hand is
Josh
another
put it?
thing.
Yeah. How did Josh put it? He is always an 11 out of 10.
Yeah,
Just
11 out of
that
10, 20 out of
ferocious.
10. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean he's always at
Yeah,
the top
absolutely.
of his game, no matter what. No matter what is thrown at him, the situation, whatever. He's conquering it. And so that was always amazing to me for him to just like come in and be like, all right, I got this much time to record. It's like, well, here's some lyrics. Let me listen to music and da 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 da. Okay, yeah, let's do it. It's a testament to how good he is as a vocalist. So, which out of these two original albums, though, because I don't want to talk about All Else Failed. I mean, it's a re-recording. It's whatever.
Right.
And it was done in haste, basically. So with these two original albums, self-titled and Parade of Chaos, is there one that you lean more towards than the other, or are they both just kind of like, eh? Or do you love both of them? I don't know. Maybe you love both of them. Maybe they're both your favorite Zayo albums.
Best albums ever. No.
Where Zayo went wrong was less. They need more electric drums. I want to hear electric drums in Crimson Corridor. I want to hear it in Well Intentioned Virus. I want to hear what is it, key guitar? Or is that what they call it? The
guitars.
Yeah, keytar. There you go. I want to hear keytar on The Funeral of God, man. I want to hear that, They should have leaned right into all this electronic stuff.
Yep, not so much for me.
Yeah.
Sound bites is one thing, but yeah. Even those get used a little much. But anyway, yeah. I don't know if there's really one or the other I lean to. There's a few tracks off of both of them that are not bad. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
5-Year Winter does come to mind. Like, that's pretty good. What's the other one I said? Suspended.
Yeah, off of Parade. That's a good one.
That actually reminds me a lot of back in the day when I was listening to Job for a Cowboy.
Oh, okay.
Suspended by the Throat.
Yeah. Let's say more. Yeah.
It actually
okay.
Kind of gave me those vibes. I was like, that's pretty cool. And it kind of had a breakdown in it. I was waiting for the same breakdown from Job for a Cowboy. I was like, oh my goodness. And because that is like the coolest breakdown, my favorite breakdown is Suspended by the Throat, Job for a Cowboy.
Okay.
I mean, I'll be walking down the street, and just dun da da dun da da dun da dun dun dun. That has to be my favorite breakdown ever. But
you have been
anyway, I
suspended
digress.
by the throat. No, that's a good one.
Yes.
I think you and I are in
anyway,
the same
that kind of
boat
gave me
with these
similar
two
vibes.
albums. Yeah, I think you and me are in the same boat on these two albums. It's like they're not great, but they've got some good songs on it here and there. I've always liked 5-Year Winter. Tool to Scream was always one of my favorite out of these two albums. Free the Three from Parade of Chaos, The Buzzing, and yeah, Suspend to Spin is a good one too, and Pirate's Prayer is also a good one. And then I think I always like the finisher on self-titled at Zero. That was always a good one too. But yeah, I think we're both in the same boat as like, yeah, this is not the best era of Zayo, but these two albums do have some good songs on it here and there. So I mean, it could have been a lot worse with the situation that they were in. It could have been just total hot garbage. And
Right.
we
I mean,
never
other
have
than the
a
strange electronic stuff going on, it's actually musically fairly solid.
right.
Lyrically feels pretty solid. There's just some weird stuff going on, overall, but overall, like I said, if this was the only two albums, we'd be talking a whole different game.
Right.
But, you know, this is kind of a flat spot, I guess, in their discography. Otherwise,
Right.
you know, yeah, anyway, they're
Yeah, I
not
get what you're
awful.
saying though. Okay, so we're gonna put that stuff behind us now. Quick question for you, Eric. You've been to concerts before? Have you ever experienced or even heard of a band breaking up on stage mid-set? Because that's what Zayo
Not
did.
like this. Right.
Yeah, that's
Not
that's
quite
pretty
like this.
crazy, man.
I've heard, some tall tales back from the 60s and 70s of a band or
Yeah.
two doing it, but definitely not in our lifetimes. Like, that's wild.
I mean,
Um,
it's
I guess we
crazy,
would,
like, yeah, it's one thing to be like, you hear, well, like now in our age of social media, you just hear it online where it's like, hey, we've decided to part ways, whatever. You're doing it out of sight, out of mind, on your own time. But to be up there and doing your job in your element of playing music, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, well, we're stopping because we just, this guy's inebriated and there's so much tension between us. Like, we're done, people. We're done. We're not playing music anymore or whatever. So that's when it's bad, in my opinion, is when you're breaking up in the middle of your set. So you still get paid for the whole thing? I wonder.
I can't
That's
imagine.
that's gonna be even awkward when you go get the money. Yeah. Then you start trying to divvy it up. Ugh. Like, here's your money. Get out of
Oh,
here. All right, Eric, here is your third and final trivia question. Let's see if you can go 3 for 3 on Zayo.
mm.
What is Dan's profession outside of music?
Ooh, I do know this one. He is a
Ooh,
tattoo artist.
there you go. There you go. That's what I'm
Artiste.
talking about. A tattoo artiste. It's avant-garde, Eric. Yeah.
It's
Good job,
art.
man. It's art. You don't
Woo!
understand. Cool, man. 3 for 3. I like that. I like that, man. I like that. All righty.
Took some time, but I'm
After
rocking them out today.
That's okay. That's okay. That's all right. I'm just glad you got it on Zaya, man. That's a good one. That's a good one to have it on. All right. After another
Didn't get on my
hiatus,
favorite band, so
that's on you. The after another
yeah.
hiatus, the failure of promised financial backing and founding member Jesse Smith's departure, the band would have a quote, come to Jesus meeting with one another, recommitting to each other and releasing what some felt was their most mature and polished album, The Funeral of God. In your opinion, Eric, how did they do on their first quote comeback album?
Well, like I said, the earlier hiatus and this one really, they don't feel like, comeback albums necessarily. Not like some other bands we've talked about in the past, Looking at You, He Is Legend. Here I am throwing
Heavy
heavy fruit.
fruits.
Because I remember you asking me that question. You said, what album was after their hiatus breakup? And I'm like, thinking of the music and the lyrics. And I'm going, I think it's Heavy Fruit. And you're like, you got it. I was like, oh, I was guessing. That's great. Just because of the sound and everything, I was like, I can tell, I
Right.
could kind of remember talking about it. But anyway, we've talked about others too. But back to the original question. As a comeback album, it definitely holds its own. It does well. Uh, Other bands Take note. I think it does good.
You sense that maturity in their sound and that polished sound too.
As polished as it gets, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's not going to be like perfect or anything like that, but it's you definitely feel like and I think it goes along with too you're on a new record label now. You're on Ferret Records. They're really putting the backing in. You're really stepping up your game. Like I said,
And kind of
you
letting
know,
them do their own thing.
right. Jesse Smith's gone. He was kind of the backbone at that time. Now Scott's stepping up to the forefront as the backbone now, I feel like. And he's doing right. He's doing right by them. Uh anything that stood out to you on the Funeral God?
I mean, let's see. As a whole, like I said, it was just a good album. I don't know if
Okay.
there's anything
There's
that just,
any low
absolutely
points?
stuck out. I was like, wow.
Yeah. What any low points for you on that album?
Not off the top of my head. Not like, the electronic drums just really
Oh,
drug it
yes.
out for me on previous albums.
Oh man. Yeah, I can remember the reviewer that we had. He had some beefs with a couple of different things, which we were both like, just get out of here, bro. Like seriously. The one that stuck in my
Nah.
mind was he had a problem with Lesser Lights of Heaven, the song, and how it was written in it. It's like, dude, that is a brilliant song. I mean, even if it is just a simple, just like circling continuous song for however long, 2 3 minutes, it's still a great song, man. And still one of my all-time favorite riffs, dude, is that intro on um whatever the second song is called, Last Revelation, I think. No, man, what is it? Right off the top of my head, I can't think of it. But it goes, it's the guitar riff, and then it has the hi-hats kind of coming in with a roll, and it's yeah, the Rising In, First Prophecy.
Okay.
Yeah, that's oh, you can't think of it off the top of your head, man. Because I'm gonna tell you, man, that's a sick riff, and it just like comes in with like that heavy bass, like slide, doom, doom, digga doom, digga doom, doom, digga doom. Like, oh, so dirty, so dirty. Alrighty, Eric, we've mentioned it a couple of times. The Lesser Lights of Heaven DVD. I had a moment where I let Josh just kind of spill out what he wanted to talk about on that album or on that DVD. I'm going to let you have the floor. Anything, you wanted to talk about from that DVD, maybe that stood out to you or just as a whole, or maybe you just want to say, hey, it's a good DVD. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I sat down just to kind of have it in the background, and by the time I realized I was 3 hours in it, I was on the couch staring at the TV very intently. So it kind of just draws you in. It's like, what's going on? Wow, I
Okay.
didn't know that. I didn't know that either.
I
Oh,
can't look away.
so it was a train wreck for a minute, and I couldn't look away. I was like, this is really cool.
Right,
So still not completely done with it yet because it is 3.5 hours long.
right.
But I think I'm 3 hours into it. But
Shoo!
very cool in-depth look of the history of the band from their point of view, kind of glimpse into their minds of what was going on at the time. It's very interesting seeing just, I guess you could see the personalities and maybe why they might clash.
Right,
Uh, you know, Jesse and Dan not knowing what they're going to do because Jesse's like, I love you guys. No, I hate you guys. I can't believe you're even human. Get out of my face. And
right.
then Dan's over here going, I just want to know if I have a job tomorrow.
Exactly, exactly. He's like, yeah,
So,
just tell me, am I gonna have a job tomorrow or not, man? Which I mean, it
right.
makes sense
So,
with him. It's like he's got this opportunity to be an apprentice for tattoo ship, which is what he wants to do, something he always wanted to do.
right.
And then it's like, but I still want to do Zayo, but I have no clue what's going on. What are we doing? Because guys are coming and going. Are we still going to be a band? Are we still going to try to make a solid effort? And that was one of Scott's problems too with Jesse. It's like, I want to do music. I want to do this as my job because that's the only thing I've ever known. I've never had a normal job. I've always been touring and doing music. And so it's like, if I'm going to be in Zayo, it's like, I'm going to do this 100%. And you got a guy like Jesse who's like halfway there mentally, he's there physically, but mentally it's like you're saying, it's like one day I love you guys. The next, it's like, I don't like you guys and I don't like this band. I don't want to be here. Well, it's got to be one way or
Yep.
the other. I mean,
Yep.
for as many albums that they had put out at up to that point, 4, 5, 6. I mean, it's like, well, we need to decide what we're gonna do because this is not a side project. This is not some local, high school band anymore. This is like you're talking about people's lives now, you know. So
And
yeah,
their wholly livelihoods for that matter.
yeah, exactly. So.
So
Yeah, that was one thing. Just like every interview that Jesse was in, just like I just almost felt like he was just like oozing like pretentious, like I don't know. Just kidding. It's just kind of weird, but yeah. Great drummer. I've said this in the original. Great drummer. Um, not a great person. At least at that time he wasn't. So it's like okay,
right.
but anyway. Anything else you had for Lesser Lights of Heaven DVD?
Nope, it is interesting. I know it's 3.5 hours long, but I think it's worth a shot. I mean, if you like Zayo, you're enjoying their music, see what the early stuff was about. See what they were thinking when they were making stuff. See what they were thinking when they were stopped at a train track writing 5 Year Winter,
Right.
in the middle of town trying to get through to get to the studio. And they're going, oh, this is cool. Let me write this down.
Right.
And
Yeah,
I mean, just kind of neat little things like that.
that's the interesting point too, is like it's them. It's I mean, it's one thing to sit here and
Yeah.
listen to us or listen to me and Josh, but it's them tell the history themselves that live through it. So all
Yep.
right, let's talk about the album that comes after Funeral of God. That's The Fear Is What Keeps Us Here. So this album took an interesting turn. Whereas Funeral of God was, their comeback album, and it was, it had that mature sound, it had a kind of a polished feel to it. Production wise, Fear Is What Keeps Us Here is a little bit different. Much like Norma Jean's Kiss the Martyr, Bless the Child album and the Chariots, Everything is Alive album. And there's reoccurring theme there because both of those feature Josh Coggin. Both those albums were recorded live to analog. Um, and so was The Fear Is What Keeps Us Here. Specifically, the recording of Dan's vocals on a Shure hand mic through an amp, which created overdrive or kind of a muffled sound, as I'd like to describe it. It was to simulate a PA system at a small club. Now, ultimately, the point of doing this by the band and the producer was to capture Zayo's live sound. What are your thoughts, Eric, on this recording method and this album as a whole?
So I kind of like this approach. It's pretty cool. It won't always produce the best sounding or the most polished music ever, that's for sure. But it does have a richness that's really hard to catch outside of a live recording process, and especially doing it the way they did it and other bands too. It just there's a particular sound of the band there at the same time doing everything.
Right.
It's not stacked. It's not done a certain way. It's all live mixed. It's done there. There's only so much after work you can do to it to quote fix it. And I like that kind of that rawness to it. Let's see what other note I had on that. Definitely a solid album overall. Dan's mids grew quite a bit during this little era.
Yep.
Like he always had those kind of low growly stuff going on. This album, a lot more in the mids, which I like. I like a lot. Uh, Kind of what got me into a lot of the heavy, screamy type musics was that era of Job for a Cowboy and bands like that had highs, mids, and lows, and then you'd sometimes mix them together and have the highs and the lows at the same time, and that that kind of thing, alternating your heavy vocals I enjoy
Right.
that.
Right.
So some of his mids, actually, I wrote this. Don't hate me for this. Um, they vaguely remind me of Bring Me the Horizon during
Hey,
the
hey, hey, hey,
Count Your
hey.
Blessings.
Okay.
Bring it on.
Okay.
And actually, they were kind of about contemporary for this album, pretty close. So I could see why the mids are growing.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah, decent album. I like it.
I always, I'm with Josh. He said that his biggest beef was like, well, I don't know. I do like this method. And I liked it on Everything Is Live from the Chariot, and I liked it on Kiss the Martyr from Norma Jean. My beef with this one is I would have liked the vocals to come through a little bit better. It feels like it is kind of lost at times. Um, and it may be the way that they record it with, like the sure hand mic, through the amp creating the overdrive. Kind of sounds kind of
Well, if you want
muffled
a
to me
live
at times.
experience, you want that live experience.
Yeah,
That's what you get sometimes.
for
I
for
mean,
for
that's
sure.
you go to a live
Yeah,
show and you're standing in front of I don't know, the amp for the bassist. You're going to hear a lot of bass.
right.
You move over 3 feet and stand in front of the one for the main guitar. Wow, that's a really cool solo. Where's the supporting music?
Right.
You
Exactly.
know?
They only have one guitarist, right?
So
Oh wait, there's another guy over there. What's he doing? Is he just air guitaring? Because
just
I don't hear him at all.
yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
it does that kind of brings into that live experience. So I mean, I kind of
Right.
get it.
Yeah. I mean,
But
I don't
I
hate
could
it.
kind of see
It
that as an actual album. I could definitely see that. But just what really redeems it for me is those mids. I really enjoy his Dan's mids on this one.
Yeah. I always felt like of course, again, Dan brings it 11 out of 10, as always.
Yep.
Um, if you combine, well, the one thing that I always liked about this album was if you combine that live to analog production, combine that with Dan's 11 out of 10 vocals and lyrics, um, mixed in with the creepy as all get out album artwork, this thing is just like it's a beast. If you just like sit there and listen to that whole album and just like stare at the album artwork, dude, that thing will probably give you chills because it does me. It's like I can like sit, like I almost feel like I'm in that room with that cloaked figure, with everything that's going on. It's like, oh my gosh, man, it's just crazy how it's like, to me they almost made that album artwork come alive with the music, you know. So, and we'll talk more about album
Yep. I
artwork
like
at
it.
the end of this episode.
Little teaser.
Alrighty, little teaser there. Stick around. All right, excluding their newest album, which is Crimson Corridor, their album following The Fear Is What Keeps Us Here, entitled Awake, to me always felt like their least talked about album. Now, they only made 8,000 copies to go with this. There was basically little to no marketing to go along with it too, to push it out there to the public. And then pretty quickly after, the band went on hiatus. So I think that kind of, mixes into the formula of why I feel that way. But
Right.
even though it is,
Perfect storm
you
of
know,
everything bad.
exactly, even though it is a good or such a good album all the way through, it's more melodic than any previous Zayo album before, and I feel like Scott Mellinger really shines with his riffs and even clean vocals. I feel like we really start to get more. I mean, we had some on, not so much on Fear, but we really started hearing him on Funeral of God. I felt like his vocals on at that time were still kind of rough. I mean, you could tell he's like he wasn't great at singing, but he's trying. He's like, well, we want to throw some cleans in. It was like, let's, I'll do it or whatever. But I feel like by the time we get to Awake here, it's like he's hitting on a different level with those clean vocals, and of course, he's kind of the equivalent to Dan when it comes to guitar work. I mean, his riffs are always good, in my opinion, at least. Um, so that's my opinion, Eric. How do you feel about Zayo's album entitled Awake? Awake? Excuse me, Awake?
Okay.
Huh?
With a question mark.
Huh?
Uh, I went through Spotify numbers, and really, it actually is pretty low comparative to actually like the first two albums. Really, or everything else has a lot more listens. This album doesn't have a whole lot. Like I said, pretty comparable to the first two albums,
Right.
which that's kind of interesting. Like it's in between Splinter Shards and Blood and Fire, really. So it's
Okay.
kind of right there if I remember all the numbers correctly.
Okay.
I didn't want to spam my notes with 10,000
No,
numbers. So,
you're good.
but it was just kind of interesting. I was looking at all the ones around it, contemporary albums. I'm going, wow, that really is low. Like you talk about not talked about album. It is the perfect storm of, well, they made 8,000 copies, only 8,000 copies.
Right.
They, went on hiatus right after that. It's like, yeah, they're not going to, put more out if they're just, you know, on hiatus.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, that being said, it is a well-rounded album, and it is slowly creeping into some of my favorites from them. I had
Okay.
to, I put an extra eye on them. I really listened to this album pretty hard. I say hard. Yeah, I listened to it really hard,
Really
with both
hard.
ears.
Yeah.
So,
He
but I
grimaced the
really
whole
gave it
time.
a. But I gave
What are
it a
you doing
second
over
shot,
there?
like a
I'm
really
listening
good
to
shot,
Zayo's album Awake.
and it's really hard.
Oh, it's really hard.
So, but anyway, yeah, slowly creeping into my favorites from them after listening to it a couple of times this time around.
I see. I think you and I are in
So
the same
yeah,
boat. It's really like I hadn't listened to it until we did the episode. And I was like, dang, man, okay, this is a pretty good album. I'm surprised more people didn't like talk about it, you know. And again, the circumstances, right around it and coming afterwards and so on and so forth. Um but yeah, it's like once I listened to it the first time and I kind of went back after the episode and was listening to it, a couple of different things and I started having that feeling of like I want to listen to Awake. I want to listen to that. And it's just like, man, it's hitting even harder the second time and the third time and the fourth. It's like this is really good, man. And so yeah, it's starting to work its way up there now on the top Zayo albums for me personally. So
yeah, it might break top five for me right now because they
okay.
have enough. I can do a top five, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Plenty. Plenty. Unlike other bands that we'll talk
Lots to choose
about.
from, right?
Okay. So they're going to go on hiatus right after Awake. It's their longest hiatus to date. I say that lightly because I hope that they never go on another hiatus again. And I honestly don't think that they're in that position to do so because of the circumstances of being on their own label now and everything and not having to worry about, oh, well, record label said we got to get one out, or whatever. They can do whenever they want. So, um, but they go on a hiatus, longest one in their tenure. Um, at that point in my life, I really wasn't listening to them. Um, I know I already mentioned that with, what I said about Awake and everything, but um, Josh was still into them at that time. He's always been into them. What am I talking about? Um, and so I always picture just like, because he's talked about in the original episode too about hearing that they were coming back with a brand new album in 2017, The Well-Intentioned Virus. And I always kind of like put myself in his position of like being as big of a fan as he is, and then being on hiatus, and then all of a sudden they're coming back, and you're kind of like, okay, is this going to be good? Or am I going to be really disappointed, man? After so long, waiting and waiting, it's like, okay. And I can only imagine Eric turning on that very first song, The Weeping Vessel, and after all that time and just being blown away, because that's probably my favorite song on that album. But just being blown away by that full band entrance and the 11 out of 10 growling, gnarly, gurgling vocals of "Woe to the Vessel" from Dan. Man, I remember like the first time I heard it, just in general. And I was blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, dude. Oh my gosh, this is a great album. already. And I was just on the first line of the first song, you know. But like I said, being in Josh's shoes of being around them so long, and having them being your one of your favorite bands, and then oh God, I'm really scared to listen to this album, and then just like hits so hard out of the gate, you know, that's got to be a really good feeling, you know. And then to follow Well-Intentioned Virus with the Pyrrhic Victory EP, I mean, what a way to come back, you know, after a hiatus. I don't know about you, but that's how me and Josh feel. What do you say?
Well, talking about having poor Josh having this as one of his favorites. I'm so sorry. Well, I mean, just as
What?
far as having Zayo as one of his favorites,
Oh,
that having Zayo as one of your favorite bands is a hard thing to do. I can't imagine, especially during some of the hiatuses and the
oh, just
turmoil
yeah,
and the
yeah,
oh
well,
man,
yeah,
is
that's
it
rough.
not today, tomorrow?
Right.
Who knows, man?
Yeah.
And then seems very stressful to me.
Well, and I
But
think
this album,
like lucky for us, we didn't have to live through that point of like, you know,
right?
the era of
Yes,
chaos or whatever. So I
yes.
don't, yeah, we didn't discover them until afterwards. I mean, my first album was Funeral that I heard. Um, and I don't know if Funeral was his first one, maybe or whatever, but around that time period, I think at least. But so we didn't at least have to live through that era of, yeah, will they, won't they? What are they gonna do? We don't know, you know. But
Will they break up on stage? Yeah,
yeah,
probably.
jeez. Yeah.
So, yeah, anyway, but this album in particular absolutely slaps. I love this album.
This is your favorite, isn't it?
That's yes,
That's what I
like
thought. That's why I threw it up
yes,
here. I was like, I think this is his favorite. I'm gonna throw one up just for you, Eric. So
yep, yep. I like it quite a bit, and I want other bands again to take note. This is how you come
grab
back.
your
This
notepad,
is the
people.
way to
Get you a
do
pen or
it.
pencil.
Woe to that vessel, because your ears, the vessel they're attached to, is going to explode.
Mm.
Good stuff.
Mm, mm, mm. Mm, mm, mm.
So
Delicious,
I
man.
like it. I like it a lot.
Phew. Yeah,
Good stuff.
that thing slaps so hard, man. It slaps so hard you look back at it and you turn the other cheek and say, slap me again.
Yes, please. Thank
Please.
you, sir. May I have
May I have
another?
another? Oh man, that's great. That's great. Anything else for well-intentioned virus, Eric?
Not for now, anyway.
Okay. We'll talk about it. I'm sure he'll come up later on, man.
It probably will.
All right. So reformat, reboot. It's a little remix album, Eric. I know you strike me as a remix fan. You strike me as a big remix fan,
Wiki,
buddy.
wiki, wiki, wiki.
It could
Give
be
me the
farther from the
dubstep
truth.
remix.
Oh, jeez.
Right.
Yeah, all I could think of was when I heard this album, all I could think of was I Wrestled a Bear once, their debut album, and then they do a remix of it, and then they do a dubstep EP. It's like, okay, what's happening? You know, first off, it's just their debut album. Come on, you know. But anyway, back to Zayo. Reformat, Reboot is their remix album, which took songs from Well Intentioned Virus, some different DJs or whatever, kind of remixed it, so on and so forth. It was sold in different forms, one being a Nintendo Entertainment System game cartridge. Eric, is this the most unique format you've seen a band sell an album, or do you know of any others that maybe top that?
Nope.
Because
I think this is absolutely the
I,
strangest.
I was about to say that's probably like the craziest one I've ever seen. I mean, I don't really
Like,
know
I'd
how
like to
else
know
you.
if you plugged it into an old Nintendo, like, would it have that 8-bit sound?
I
Or would it
guess.
actually, like, I don't know. I don't have any idea. That would be really cool. I might have to get a hold of
Yeah.
one of those because it probably cost me $1 million. But who knows?
Probably not that much,
But
but I mean, I'm sure it'd be a pretty penny, but yeah.
I mean, I remember, golly, Walmart, Best Buy, one of those big blue box stores came out with like these little single use USBs.
Yeah.
And I remember that was really strange. I was like, I mean, just digitally download it. It's the same thing, and
Right.
I don't know. But I
Yeah,
thought that was
that's
strange. But compared to a Nintendo cartridge, that's pretty strange.
It takes the cake right there, buddy. It takes the
It
cake.
does. I mean, other than that, I have had a artist on stage. Speaking of music distribution as a whole, artist on stage says, "Go get my new album. I don't care how you get it, even if you have to pirate it. Do it today." I was like,
Wow.
"What
Who was
did you
that?
say to me?" That was Memphis the first time I seen him. That was
Oh,
their 2017 album, which
okay.
was a hot pile of garbage, in my opinion. I mean,
Okay. Well, maybe that's why he was saying, I don't care if you go pirate it, just go get it. Please, please go get it. Please, please,
listen to
please
me,
listen to
please.
us. Please love us.
I mean, the idea behind it was, this album has a good message, and I want you to hear
Right.
it. But it really struck. I was standing there in the crowd going, "What did he just say? Did
Am
he
I the only
just
one
tell me
hearing
to
this?
go steal his
Go steal
album?"
it. You have my permission.
I
Yeah, explain that one to
yeah,
the police. No, you don't understand. Maddie gave me his permission
from stage, he told me personally.
from stage. Yeah, that's crazy.
So that was strange. As far as music distribution, that's the strangest thing I've ever heard. But
The
anyway,
Nintendo, though, man, that takes the cake on
as far as
format.
actual distribution of you selling your own stuff, that's
Right.
beyond
Yeah,
strange.
that's crazy.
Pretty cool, especially with the album artwork that's on it. Looking at this old computer,
Oh,
uh,
artifacts.
plug it into the old Nintendo, right?
Makes me think of
That's pretty cool.
the original Planet of the Apes with Charlton Heston when he finds the Statue of Liberty all buried in the sand. He's like, no. That's what it makes me think of. Artifacts. Alrighty. Let's talk about this newest album, Eric, The Crimson Corridor. It's the band's latest gift to the metalcore world. You're welcome. Give us your
And we
thoughts,
all thank you
Eric.
for it.
We all thank you. Thank you so much. So yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Give us your thoughts, Eric, on the album. And do you see the band stopping anytime soon?
Well, another solid album. Maybe a little slower than some of the previous albums, but I feel like the catchy melodic nature makes up for it in the end.
Right.
Not at all bad. But as far as
Right.
anytime stopping soon goes, if the trend holds, they'll break up or go on hiatus and come back again.
Don't do that. Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me,
No,
man.
but at least their comeback album's going to slap, right?
Even harder. It's going to slap even harder. If you told me in the
If it
future, like it's going to
slaps,
slap even harder than Well-Intentioned Virus, I will slap you instead. Like, there's no way.
woo!
There's no way it can.
But
That'd be crazy,
in
man.
reality, I don't see them stopping anytime soon, really. Especially now they're kind of on their own, doing their own thing at their own pace. They don't have tooth and nail breathing down their neck going, "Are you today, please,
Yeah.
right now?
Come
Make
on.
me some
Come
money.
on. Do it. Come on. Do something. Come
Poke it with a
on.
stick." Yeah. So
Yeah, I feel like everything's kind of set up where you're on your own record label, do when you want. You're still able to go do your things. He's still doing tattooing, whatever. Do your thing, but at the same time, it's like Zayo's still here for you, and you can do it on your own time, your own dime, so on and so forth. So I just feel like I
they're
think
in
we're
a
getting to
place
the
where
point.
every band wants to be.
Right, exactly. Paramore's there now. They're going to be releasing their own stuff.
Yes.
So that's the goal, man. That's the goal.
We'll see how that comes out.
Yeah. I think if patterns are correct here, because Well Intention came out in 2017, Crimson Corridor came out in 21. So if you're talking about another 4 years, I mean, we're due for another album from Zayo. Fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed we'll get one here.
Maybe.
Maybe this year, maybe next year. Well, we will see. Alrighty. One thing I wanted to say about Crimson Corridor, I forgot to say this on the original episode. So I made mention that RIPW is probably my favorite song on Crimson Corridor. Um, the Reaper's robes, bro. He wore the Reaper's robes. Yeah, that's so sick. And his delivery of those lines are is so good.
Well,
Um,
even in the title track, Crimson Corridor, the way he's screaming, just Crimson
oh,
Corridor.
Crimson Corridor. Yeah.
Like,
Oh my
it's
gosh.
almost like I can see it because of the way he's screaming it. It
Well,
is
and
fantastic.
that's the other cool thing
Dan
about
is
this
fantastic.
album. Yeah, that's what's so cool about this album too is it's just like Fear. It's like just take that album artwork and just stare at it the whole time. It's like it's gonna come alive, bro. And I still believe that those two album artworks are like side by sides almost. They look to be
Both
about in
white
the same
walls,
room,
dark
man.
floor. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
see it. Yeah.
But RIPW is probably my favorite off of Crimson Corridor. Um, and it always made me think of this old movie, this old silent movie that I had seen. It's from like 1921, I think, and it was called The Phantom Carriage, and it was about this guy. There's kind of like this myth of like or folktale or whatever that like the last person to die before the clock strikes 12 on New Year's Day is, or to turn over the new year or whatever, will become the Grim Reaper for that next year. And one of his buddies actually ended up being the Grim Reaper for that year, and he ended up dying, um, being the last person to die that year. And so he's kind of like on this journey of like, here's where your life went wrong, and you can correct it this way, and blah blah blah. But I would just kind of think about that. That's that movie when I'm listening to that song. But anyway, such a good song though, dude. And he delivers it so well. And I still always think of Tool's Schism at the beginning of that song because those riffs are kind of alike, with the bass on Schism being on do 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 do, and then the guitar riff on
Right.
Crimson Corridor being dun 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 dun, or whatever. So yeah,
Pretty similar. Yeah.
sick. Pretty similar, man. Pretty similar. All right, Eric, we made it. We made it through all those questions.
Woohoo.
Let's get down to brass tacks here, bro. Give me your favorite albums, songs, lyrics, riffs. I want to hear some song titles too, and we'll save the best for last. I'm going to give you Josh's top five Zayo album artworks, and then we're going to get your top five Zayo album artworks and compare them. So take her away, Eric.
All right. So lyrics. This is from Repressed back on Splinter Shards because going over all those lyrics, I realized how sick these actually are. But let's see, plastic words for a plastic nation, bred to live the American dream.
I feel like
And that's
anytime
from
somebody
Repressed.
mentions American Dream in lyrics, it's like, yes, because it's never in a good way. It's always like, yeah, this was a lie,
Right.
it's a dream and it's not
Yep.
real. I always think
And
of there was an old band called Legia, and I don't remember what the song was called, but the line that always sticks out to me in that song, and Josh will know when I say it, is the American dream is a fabrication, a lie. And then he says smile for the camera, da 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 da. Anyway, but yeah, I always think of that.
yep, definitely. And that's part of that song that made me think that that could be kind of about the American, political system or
Right.
the systemic issues or whatever. But next one is from Well-Intentioned Virus. Let's see if I can mispronounce this name here. Jimba Itati.
I already knew before you said it. I was like, I already know what song it's gonna be. Yeah.
Yep, that song. That's usually what I call it. But I really enjoy this. So I hold my children's breath. I feel their mother's pain. Share my brother's blood with my sister's veins. Cry my mother's tears through my father's eyes. Yet the mouths of our graves sing songs of unknown places and laugh as we struggle to escape.
Oof. Man, that's some layered stuff right there, man. That's an
That
onion.
is really, really well layered.
That is so good,
That's
bro.
the
That
Zay
is
onion right
poetry.
there.
That is
That is absolute
poetry,
poetry.
man. Good night, nurse. What else you
Yeah, I
got,
could
man?
take that to poetry class back in the day, and
Oh my
teacher would be
gosh,
like,
yeah.
"That's fantastic! Wow, oh
Did
my
you write
goodness!"
that?
I said, "Yeah, I got it from a metal band."
You want to hear the song?
So we actually had a speaking of that, we in a literature class because we were talking about lyrics of songs. Our teacher said, "Make a CD
Oh
with
no.
these with this story in mind, with the lyrics and things like that." So I put together. It actually started with Bob Wills,
Okay. Oh
"Rain
boy.
Cloudy Blues." So I
Okay.
mean, I went way back, and then I ended it over on the other end of things. I think with literally like "Job for a Cowboy," suspended by the
Suspended by
throat
the
kind of
throat.
thing, like.
That's exactly what
And
I was thinking.
I went heavier from one spot all the way to the other. And unfortunately, she said, "Oh, I'll play it in class if you make the CD and you get extra
Oh
credit." And I
no.
was like, "This is going to be fantastic."
This is gonna be great.
And unfortunately, mine got put on at the end of class, so we just barely missed, suspended by the throat because I was excited.
Oh.
But anyway, as a side thought to that. So let's see, albums. Far as favorite album goes, probably very little surprise here, but Well-Intentioned Virus.
No.
But as far as favorites go, Blood and Fire and Liberate are actually pretty close up there.
Okay.
When I wake up in that Zao kind of mood, it's one of those three typically.
Going
Like
for
I said earlier,
classics. Okay.
Awake
Awake.
is kind of making its way in there. So anyway, so you ready for the top three songs?
I'm ready for it, man. Number 3.
Number 3 is Awake or Awake.
Awake.
The sounds, the riff, this whole song is really winning me over. I've really been enjoying it. Like I said, since really putting a closer eye to this album's like, this is really fantastic. I don't know why it just flew under the radar. So anyway, number 2
Number 2.
is The Well-Intentioned Virus.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
So good.
that song is so good. And then that was actually kind of a toss-up for number 1. And the number 1 actually is now
Number 1.
Jimba Itati. And that's actually
Oh,
mostly because of the lyrics on it.
lyrics.
Because
Okay.
Well-Intentioned Virus, and I was actually going back and forth on those, and I went and looked at those lyrics. I was like, oh, that's too good. And I put that at number 1 for me.
Oh man, I just hear that riff now on Well-Intentioned Virus. It's like, oh, so good. So
Yes.
good, man. That combination of like still having Russ and Scott on guitar combined with like the hard hitting now of Jeff Gretz on drums. So good, man. So good.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just such a good winning combination there, man.
Absolutely. Are you ready for those album artworks?
Yeah,
Shall we
let me
rehash Josh's?
Yeah, just to give you guys a run back of Josh's top 5 Zayo albums from 5 to 1. Number 5, Parade of Chaos. Number 4, Pyrrhic Victory. Number 3, Where Blood and Fire Bring Rest. Number 2, The Crimson Corridor. And number 1 on Josh's top 5 Zayo album artworks is The Fear Is What Keeps Us Here. Now, Eric, your top 5 favorite Zayo album artwork, starting with number 5.
I went with self-titled.
Ooh, okay.
It's kind of a weird look. I like it. It kind of reminds me of Vision from the Marvel movies.
That's what I was gonna say. It always makes me think of Vision. Yeah.
Yeah, especially like, what was it, WandaVision? When he was like dressing
WandaVision.
up in suits and it was 1950 something.
Yep.
He's wearing that suit. He's looking down, I was like,
Yep.
that looks like straight up out of
Looks like
WandaVision.
him.
That's pretty cool. And it's
Zayo
how many years
speaking the
before?
future.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
right.
crazy, man. That's crazy.
So the fourth one for me,
Number 4.
The Fear Is What Keeps Us Here. And like we
Ooh,
talked
okay.
about, that creepy
Okay.
factor.
So good, man.
And then it really is. It is good. Just like number 3.
Number 3.
I went with Parade of Chaos for number 3.
Okay. Man, that one's always because the album just as a whole overall we talked about it just kind of like not really falls flat, but I mean there's some good songs on there, but it just doesn't hit all the way. And I remember the first
Right.
time seeing the album artwork and just kind of like, it's that guy in the suit sideways. It's got some lyrics kind of scribbled on it, throughout. But then like the big like cigarette burn, in the middle of it, or
Yes.
almost maybe not even cigarette burn, but like it makes you think of more like those old school cigarette lighters from the cars, those big ones,
Yes.
big
That's
round
exactly what
ones.
I thought when I saw it.
Yeah, so like just looking at that without even hearing any music yet, it's like, man, this could be a good album. This could be a really good album. And we've talked about that before with, album names, song titles. I mean, it's just one of those where I look at it and I'm thinking this is gonna be great. And it just didn't do it. I'm just really disappointed because it was such a good album
Right.
artwork too, man. But
Well, and if you apparently, I don't know if it was on the back of it. I was looking up some pictures of it, and if it was on the back or the booklet, I don't know. But apparently, there was like a kind of a picture of the band, more or less the guys that were there, but they had all their
yeah.
faces burnt out, and I
Oh,
was like, "That's
nice.
fantastic."
That's
And
pretty
or that
sick.
could have been a promotional leaflet. I don't know, but
Yeah.
could be fan art. I don't know. But
That's
anyway,
pretty
it
sick.
was that face being burnt out like that just made me think of this era and how they were probably all burnt out, feeling just like that looked.
Oh,
I
I'm
was like,
sure, dude.
that's pretty good. Like,
I still
but
say,
anyway,
man, I'm still advocating for somebody to make an online database of old lyric booklets. Because man, that's just
yes.
such a lost art. God, I wish somebody would.
Uh,
Yeah, where's yours?
I think I threw it over here somewhere. I don't know. I can't
No,
see it.
no,
Oh,
well.
here it is. Shoot, right in front of me.
Nope, there she is. Escape the fate.
Can
Oh
you see
my
me?
gosh. Yeah, there you go. That was beautiful. That was beautiful.
So
Oh my gosh.
that was the front of the album. If I can get this right here, and then that's the back of the booklet.
Now
So if
put
you
that part
go,
up to your face.
see if I can even do that.
I'll guide you. Okay, a little lower. You're okay. No. Move your no. Okay, this is not going to work.
Oh, 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 oh.
Up, down, down.
She has a really good
Move,
looking
move
beard.
it,
Look at
move
that.
it down. Yeah, just a little bit more. Now to your left, right
Oh, look at
there.
that beard.
That's perfect. When you smiled, that just stopped
So,
it. That was awesome. Oh, that was so
so anyway,
beautiful.
that was one of those that always I thought was so freaky when I first found it out because I think it was behind the CD had that same picture of the face, and then you
Right.
could line it up with the back of the booklet like that, and I was like, oh, that's
Like,
going to keep me
"Wah!"
up at night. So
Oh man.
anyway, where were we at here? Number two, I
Number
believe.
two. Number two.
Blood and Fire. I love
All
that
right.
how he's just like exploding from the inside.
You
So
know what it makes
especially
me
with
think
the
of?
like Dan's, this is Dan's breakout big time album here.
Right.
And I mean, the sound of him doing the things he does, he is exploding from the inside. Like, wow. So I dig
Man.
it. I dig it a lot.
Yeah, it always makes you think of like something from like Dragon Ball Z or something. But anyway.
And then
Alrighty, ready for number
number
one?
one,
Number one.
look at my co-host here. Look behind him. That's it.
Oh,
Well-intentioned virus.
I like it. I like it, man. I like it. What does it for
I
you on
love
this one?
that. The creepy factor
Just
between
everything
the
creepy about
vessel,
it. Yeah.
the the executioner's robes, I guess, with the teeth and the other arms coming out, like, and then again, kind of that creepy factor of his voice and the everything going on around it, kind of like it does it for you for the fear is what keeps us here.
And
A
Crimson,
lot of that
yeah, it's
does it
like,
the same
ew,
for me for this one. Like,
it's creepy, man.
whoo, I like it.
It's funny
So
going through these albums again, these album artworks, and you talked about with Parade of Chaos. that kind of like that burnt look on their faces almost makes, maybe it's kind of like they're trying to tell us we're burnt out. Blood and
Right.
Fire being Dan's first album, like you said, just like that guy's shooting fire out of his body. It's almost like what Dan's doing vocally is like shooting fire out of his body. Well-Intentioned Virus came out in 2017. I mean, we had COVID, and 3 years later, it's kind of like, yeah, you trying to tell me something, man? You trying to tell me something? I don't know. It's just, it's kind of interesting, man.
Well, back then,
Kinda
what was it?
interesting.
Was it swine
Swine
flu
flu.
or
Yep, that was the big
swine
thing right before that. Yeah.
or
I think that was like early
20?
2010s when that was
Okay,
happening.
and
Yeah.
there was bird flu sometime in there, and then there was
Yeah.
Ebola. Yeah, that was
Yeah. Oh,
fun.
yeah. Ebola. Ebola.
Ebola.
Ebola.
I think that was like 2018 or 19 though. Anyway,
All right. Well, here's
but yeah,
Eric's top 5 Zayo album artworks again. Number 5, self-titled. Number 4, The Fear Is What Keeps Us Here. Number 3, Parade of Chaos. Number 2, Blood and Fire. And number 1, The Well-Intentioned Virus. Looks like you guys agreed on Fear, Blood, and Parade. So 3 out of the 5 you both agreed on. The
right in the
difference
middle.
being, the difference being he had Pyrrhic Victory and Crimson Corridor, and then you had self-titled
say
and Well-Intentioned Virus.
I did kind of skip over Pyrrhic Victory because I just went with actual albums.
Yeah, you can
But
go back and
that is a good artwork there.
go back and listen to that
'Cause
one because that's a good that's a good
I mean,
album.
I didn't skip that. I actually, I listened to it. I just didn't include it in my album. The artwork search.
Oh, I got what you're just talking about the album artwork. Okay, my bad. I thought you were saying you didn't even listen to it. Okay, I got what you're saying.
No. I listened to it, but
Okay.
I just went with full albums as far as album artwork. But that is a really
Gotcha.
good
Okay.
artwork. Like that's
when you know
the
it's
way he's
good because it's an
embracing
EP.
death.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
All right, man. That was Zayo. I hope you enjoyed the journey. Give us your final thoughts, Eric, your final pleas on the band Zayo.
They are criminally underrated right now. Their listens are abysmal. Go
say
pump
it
them
again.
Up. Those are
Say
rookie numbers.
It again.
Rookie numbers. Pump them up.
Pump them up,
yeah,
people. The OGs.
Definitely.
If you like metalcore now, go back and appreciate the founding father of metalcore. Some might say.
Even then, like the last 3 albums or so, still hold their own really well with modern metalcore. Like,
right.
I like them. Like I said, all 3 of those last albums hold their own. Even going back, like I said, Blood and Fire earlier, Blood and Fire holds its own. It's a good album. Like I said, it's really hard to believe that it's 1998. It does not sound like it.
Nope.
So
nope.
Timeless.
Zayo equals
go listen to them.
Timeless. Yeah.
They are alive.
I hope you enjoyed it. I mean, you found another good band, right? That's what we like to do.
I really did, actually. This one, I kind of went deep on this one. I enjoy it.
Good. That's what we like to hear on the History of the Cores podcast. It makes me and Josh happy and proud. Put smiles on our faces. Warms my heart.
The Proud Pop podcast.
The Pop is proud. The Pop is proud. All righty. If you got nothing else to say about Zayo, Eric, I'm going to get on out of here.
I got 100 things to say, but I'll let us get out of here.
I don't even know how long we've been going, to be honest with you, man.
Who knows?
Oh, boy.
It's Zayo.
All righty. It's Zayo. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. All right. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at @IsSurvivedByPro for news and the latest episode postings, not just on this show, but our other shows as well. We have the History of the Cores podcast, the proud pop of this very podcast right here, where me and Josh sit down and talk about bands from the core genre. It's a more strict version. We go through the history and the discography, every single album, so on and so forth. We also have the Red Right Hand podcast, which has covered, it's over, it's done. Besides, if we get a movie, it's covered all 6 seasons of the Peaky Blinders. And we also have the Throne of the Dragon podcast, which so far has covered season 1, soon to be season 2 of HBO's House of the Dragon. Also, while you're on Twitter, make sure to follow my co-host at Joshua and Gary, and make sure to leave us a 5-star review and write us a comment on whatever podcast service you're using. And if you want to listen to us, see our smiling faces. What's up? How you doing? Head on over to our YouTube page. Just search Is Survived by Productions, and that'll have every episode from all of our shows. Subscribe to the channel. Thumbs up the video. Alrighty, Eric, I will see you in our next episode. Till then, signing off.
See ya.